Professor David Reich of Harvard Care High School is one of the guideline lights in the box of old DNA. His crew's job has throw a new prospect on humane story, reconstructing the epical migrations and gene exchanges how profiled the human beings of various regions world. There he explains how the coup in our insight deployed. If it seems as if down there has been an lavanya of latter headlines demonstration insights in the travails of our old ancestors, thou be law. But the move changing in the insight of our history has been house for year currently. He's been managed by new techniques and technology advancements in the research of old DNA, gene data received of the skeletal remnant of our length dead family. Reich was grown in Washington, D.C., by parents who were prominent in their own fields. His mom Tova is a Romanist and his dad Walter is a prof of psychiatrist who as well serviced as the at first CEO of the Joint State Genocide Monument Museum. In my household, down there was a prize and a powerful faith located on creation, making thing new and exciting and acute. Scientific was seen as the highest item who could make, he says. I had lot of interests, but the things I was largest concerned in were story and scientific. Reich says how he bring down in loving inhumane evolution story at the start of his PhD in chemistry, but later excited off of the object to care genetic. He explainable, this technique at the period very wasn't really nice for training a lot on humane story. Through the 1990s and previous 2000s, teaching of old DNA of our own kind were very controversial since of observational data how skeletal remnant were readily polluted by the DNA of residing human beings. As such down there were ever whining doubts on if a gene succession belonged to the length dead person creature investigated or to an archaeologist implicated in excavating the remnant, a museum supervisor who had processed them, or a guest to the lab wherever they were creature analyzed. Paebo's team advanced a set of protocols to hinder pollution sliding via, consisting possessing the identical samples of production sequenced in 2 laboratories by various teams. But the box skilled a coup in the occurrence of as-called following generation sequence technique. While in body day, the DNA in its cells begins to break down downward, above period it splits in less and less chunks, as accumulating some forms of harm. It as well gets polluted in extensive amounts of microbe DNA of the broad environmental. The new sequence machines could be utilized to insulate the humane gene content of bacterium DNA and later sow along the diminutive patchy in a legible succession. I was work on the recent 10,000 year of humane story, reconstructing it on the base of this day human beings. Particularly in India, it was evident the old DNA techniques how treated in Neanderthals were departure to job though superior in more than latter humans, Reich explains. I talked to Svante and he told, the is really essential but he's not my attention. I'm concentrated love a laser treatment shaft on antiquated humans and previous contemporary humans. Reich took a drastic judgment to fully detool his lab at Harvard, that had been concentrated on care genetic, on the channel of Paebo's lab in Leipzig. Down there was a scholar in my lab, Nadine Roland, who had treated in Leipzig, in Svante Paebo, who knew how to do all they helping us to set the lab. It was a big bet how there was a nice item to make. The bet pay off in a main path. Reich utilized his following generation sequence technology to force via genome following genome. To date, the lab has received DNA of more than rather than 900 old individuals. The results are help collect new narratives for the peopling of our planet. In several cases, the results include constrained archaeologists and historians to devisit several length-held ideas, sparkling no little sum of discussion and debate. Reich's crew has helping untangle the entangle web of migrating and interbreeding how set downward the this day gene scenery of Europe. Archaeologists had length suspected how the distribution of agriculture out of the close East and through Europe was a forming occasion in the mainland's history. Reich's job helping prove how the meat of quite remotely associated close East farmers and native bounty hunter-gatherers had been key to the mix of origin how characterizes Europeans, but his crew added a tertiary key component to the smelting jar. These nomad prairie pastoralists, named as the Yamnaya, excited Western in the deceased Neolith and Bronzed Year, about 5,000 years back. In several areas of Europe, they replaced about 75% of the origin of current populations. Theories of big-scale migrations had fall out of favor above the year amongst several scholars, especially such for whom the sentence utensils, not human beings, how civilization tends to distribution via the exchanging of ideas quite rather than big-scale motion, had be a prayer. Dispute, innovative such as equine galloping, and the distribution of diseases love pestilence to populations in naive immunity system might all include play a part in several dispersals. But the reasons over these replacements stay a issue for archaeologists, says Reich. I believe we are provided information and it brightly portrays the significance of these events. Insight why it happens is a slight bit difficult for me to tell, he explains. Reich says how his staff member nicknamed Patterson's backdrop in math has been completely crucial to tantalizing out the gene relationships how Lilot Key show. My lab has 2 lab heads, not a, the sum is nicknamed Patterson. I'm not a severe mathematics, I'm numerate, a information analysis, but not a software developer of techniques. Nickname is a planet grade mathematics. Following how, he treated for else tenure at the U.S. counterpart, the Domestic Safety Agent, National Security Agency. Following outgoing the Spy Planet, Patterson treated for the Success New York-based Fence Foundation Revival Technologies, upstart his cooperation in Reich in 2001. In the recent few years, the Harvard crew has as well published teaching on old DNA of Africa, the Medium East and Oceania. Reich is now finalizing a document on the peopling of Southward Asia, a long-time region of concern, that should get published the year. It is potential to be poured above in India, wherever notions of profound-rooted origin are related to Indian nationism. For example, the email says, Reich crucially misunderstands and misrepresents concerns how are center to latter critiques of how biomedicine researchers, consisting Reich, use categories of racing and people. The researchers append, that doesn't indicate how gene change is irrelevant, it is, but it does not pursue race channel. Story has learned us the lot ways how teaching of humane gene change can be wrong and misinterpreted. Requested on the criticisms, the Harvard prof said me, I'm in fact really happy to be portion of representing the debate. I believe how scientists include been concerned on debating differences amongst populations in social fora, although all the job how we do is on differences amongst populations and training on their story. The concern is on probable improper use of how information, for nice cause. He tends the requirement for scientists to get accusation of the story, for fear they brush the lead to such in less than sound intentions. This item I include thick felt really firmly, more above period, is how the reality how scientists are too frightened to say up on these subject area tool how the vacuo gets imbued by human beings who don't very aware the research facts, he explains. Professor Reich says how scientific himself really be deliberate immunity of the impact of long-time assumptions. I believe down there's a enormous prospect for interpretive prejudice. I believe how the gene information are really severely deterrent the model how our probable law currently, he says. Yet, he adds, down there's several benefit to upcoming edit of the external, perhaps, down there's thing to be told for a non-Jewish Europe man student Hebrew people story, or a man of Africa student East Asiatic people story. In my laboratory, I've spurred human beings to job on areas how are not their own backdrop. Looking to the next, Professor Reich sees enormous capacity for disclosure as yet unidentified humane movements and gene expression exchanging in various components of the planet. I believe Africa is a location house deep by represented. Down there are perhaps just 20 genome sequences in which is the largest various location in the planet, the location in the deepest and largest facility humane story, told Professor Reich. How compares to more than rather than 1,000 genomes of Europe law currently, that is an essential but little angle of the planet. He adds, down there's so lot to make. Who We Are and How We Got There by David Reich is published by Oxford College Click.